Hi, I'm Paul Guppy. I'm Vice President for the Washington Policy Center. And once again, this week it's showtime. It is our regular legislative update of what's been going on in our state capitol. And I have a wrap up of some of the issues and also how the initiatives came out that the legislature considered, and also an update on the three initiatives that they did not take up, and some other news as well. So let's just get right to this. First of all, on the scheduling. The legislature adjourned on March 7th, right on time. That's their scheduled 60-day session. And then now what happens is that the governor has 10 days to sign or veto bills. In our state, that the governor also has line item veto authority. Technically, that's supposed to be sections, but this governor in particular has been fairly assertive in using his executive authority to do mini vetoes within a bill. In fact, he was taken to court a number of years ago by lawmakers for overusing his veto power. Jay Inslee lost that case, and in that particular bill, his veto didn't apply. But in general, the governor has 10 days to either veto an entire bill or to select out a section that he thinks should be vetoed. And we'll know about that towards around March 17th or so. That's the deadline for that. And then next January starts another 2-year cycle. So that's how our legislature works. We have long sessions and short sessions. This year was a short session. Another thing I wanted to point out is we often get questions about whether a bill from the previous year is still alive in the current year. And the answer is all bills that were considered last year and this year are now officially dead for the cycle. And so any bills that are introduced next January will be eligible to be considered for the next 2-year cycle. And that's where we stand now. So one major bill that squeaked through literally in the middle of the night at about 3 a.m. in the Senate was a bill to ban distribution and maintenance of natural gas through Puget Sound Energy. This was super controversial. It passed a number of days ago, more than a week ago, in the House, but the real squeaker was in the Senate. Democrats do have a good sized majority in the Senate, but even so, a number of Democrats voted against it. Shows how controversial it is. And as I said, it just squeaked by literally one vote. Now the spin and the narrative begins. We at Washington Policy Center have looked at this bill. Todd Myers has read it through carefully, and his conclusion is it's a natural gas ban. Even though there are limitations on the number of customers, it doesn't take away existing gas hookups. But the bottom line is it tells a monopoly, Puget Sound Energy, that they are no longer required to maintain gas services to existing homes or in new construction. There's a long kick-in period. This is often done with sort of severe mandates, so lawmakers know that they have to tread carefully. So they built in a couple of years of implementation. I always think it's interesting that they do that because election cycles happen in the meantime, and that allows politicians to decide whether was that roll call vote that I did on the banning natural gas services, was that a career-ending vote, or are people really mad? It gives them the time to come back and adjust it later on. But as it stands now, Washington State has a policy of phasing out over time the use of natural gas, and we'll see how that plays out. On the initiatives themselves, so as I reported before, the legislature earlier this week on Monday quickly passed 3 initiatives of the 6 that the people had sent to the legislature. So we have the roll call votes on those. I will run through them very quickly just so you can see how really broad bipartisan support there was for all of these. So the first one is Initiative 2111. That was to reconfirm, you might say, the ban on income taxes at both the state level and the local level. This is a policy that Washington Policy Center has encouraged for a long time. 28 cities and counties have passed local bans on an income tax. Our argument, of course, is that a graduated income tax is not permitted at the state level at all under our Constitution. So one of the reasons that this initiative passed, and the Democrats said this straight up, they're like, this has no impact in the real world. We don't have income tax now, not counting the capital gains income tax. Therefore, they felt liberated to vote for it. So the vote in the Senate was it passed 38-11, and in the House, it passed by 76-21. So these are really large margins. The next one was more controversial, the Initiative 2081 to establish a Parent Bill of Rights. Again, Democrats argued, we don't think this is making any changes in existing law. not going to have much impact out in the real world. If it makes some parents feel better that they've been empowered, fine. But the end result regarding the roll call vote was it passed in the Senate 49-0, and it passed in the House by 82-15. So again, all Republicans are voting for these initiatives, joined by a large group of Democrats. In the case of the Senate, they were joined by all the Democrats. So we consider that positive because it shows bipartisan agreement in enacting these initiatives. And the last one was Initiative 2113 to allow reasonable police pursuit. If you remember, this was the measure that would change a reasonable suspicion is all that the police would need, as opposed to them having to actually collect evidence in advance. The result was, in most cases, the police were not permitted to chase criminals. This initiative restores the ability of the police to engage in police pursuit. That measure passed in the Senate 36-13, and in the House it passed by 77-20. So as you can see from these numbers, there's a stable bipartisan coalition that got together and decided all three of these initiatives should pass. There were three that they didn't pass, and I'll explain the reasoning behind that in a minute. But first, to give an update on the budget, we're halfway through the budget cycle. And what lawmakers are supposed to do is to make adjustments. Of course, the adjustment they like to make is to spend more. And revenue has been coming into the Treasury like crazy. They had about $3 billion in additional unanticipated revenue. And of course, they move very quickly to fold all of that into the existing budget. That raises the 2-year operations budget for the state to about $72 billion. That's the highest level it's ever been. And yet, get ready, because in this election year, you will continue to hear virtually every elected official say that, except maybe conservative Republicans, but most will say, we're short on money, we need more revenue. That is just a constant. When the economy is strong, they say they need more revenue. When the economy is weak, they say they need more revenue. So that is going to be a theme that we can expect for the rest of this year. The other thing they did was work on a transportation budget right around $14.5 billion. They did include an item that we think is a complete waste of time. Our expert Charles Prestrud has been following this, and that is a study on ultra-high-speed rail system that would go from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, British Columbia. The system itself would cost at least $63 billion if they decide to build this. They just put in what lawmakers consider to be pocket change at the moment, and that's a mere $50 million for a study so that they can think about it. In political terms, what that means is that they're keeping this idea alive. We think $50 million could go a long ways towards transportation maintenance and other projects that are out there. And what I like particular and made us all smile was every time we look at these projects, they have a new, more exciting marketing name. So this project is called Ultra High Speed Rail. So I guess if you want to get support for something, you just keep adding adjectives. My suggestion is that they should call it super quick, ultra zippy, speedy, go fast rail. And then maybe people will begin to sign on. What happens in reality is that these massive projects turn out to be a bust. California has been struggling with this for 10 years. There are famous photographs of elevated rail lines in the desert that don't go anywhere, and it's costing many billions of dollars more than was expected. But the bottom line is, in the jet age, what is ultra high speed rail really supposed to do? It doesn't seem to really add public service beyond what we have now. Also, most people travel by car. So a good highway system is the best way to serve our economy. Going back to the initiatives, the three initiatives that Democrat leaders did not take up, they didn't even hold hearings on them, no discussion, nothing, was to repeal the capital gains income tax, to repeal Governor Inslee's carbon tax, or sometimes called the hidden gas tax, and to allow workers to opt out of the state's long-term care payroll tax. You notice that all three of those have one factor in common, and that is they all bring in money for the government to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And the Democrats were very upfront about this. They said, repealing those initiatives is going to cost us money, and therefore we're not going to think about it. We're not going to consider them. We're going to put them on the ballot. So we expect going forward is that they're going to put all their eggs in one basket against the three initiatives. They have already started a campaign of ad hominem attacks against Brian Haywood, who's the sponsor of them. They're calling him a billionaire, pushing these initiatives. One thing we ourselves get attacked all the time personally. In a way, we take that as good news because it means there's no substance to the argument. If you're attacking the person, the messenger, it means you have no argument against the actual substance. So there will be lots of attacks against Brian Haywood. The same thing has been done to Tim Eyman in the past. Go after the person in the hopes that people will, vote no on the idea. Regarding the substance, it's simply not true that these initiatives would, quote, cost the government money. All of the revenue that's being considered is prospective in the future. That's number one. Number two, the state is receiving, as I noted before, lots of revenue growth already under the current tax system. And so there will be campaign ads, there will be threats that K-12 education is going to be cut, early learning programs are going to be cut. Always the most popular, most basic government services are the first ones on the chopping block when there's a political campaign. We're going to be doing fact checking and truth telling by pointing out that the state has plenty of money. If they set budget priorities, all basic services can be funded, and this is just added money. The other theme that we've noticed is pointing out that, hey, free market capitalism is attacked all the time as being based on greed and exploitation. Well, I've worked in government finance and budgets for decades, and you wouldn't believe greed until you were sitting in a budget committee meeting about the way these members talk about getting money. And that is starting to poke its head up in this debate. We are already seeing leaders in the legislature say, we need this money. So there's really greed driving, making sure this revenue stays in place, and then they will threaten that basic government is going to be cut. So that's the pattern that we expect to see going forward. With that, I will wrap up. We're going to change our schedule from our usual weekly update when the legislature is in session. They have adjourned. We're going to move to a monthly update, just giving a general idea of what's going on in the state, plus what Washington Policy Center is up to. We hope that's informative to everybody. We don't want to be sort of spamming your inbox with a lot of information every week that's really not that interesting or exciting. We'll try to make sure that we're providing high quality information. And with that, I will sign off and talk to you next time.